Welcome back to the podcast, or if you're watching me on YouTube, hi, I'm Alison Howard. And today I want to talk to you about something that I think has the potential to completely change the way that you move through your day, through all of your days, and ultimately the way that you experience your life. And over the past few years, there has been a lot of conversations online about concepts like manifestation and positive thinking and lucky girl syndrome and creating your reality. And I think some of it is helpful. I think some of it is oversimplified. And then some of it, I think, leaves people feeling either skeptical or discouraged because it sounds as though they're supposed to be able to think a happy thought and instantly transform their lives. And that is not what I believe, and it's certainly not what I teach. What I do believe is that God has given every one of us more influence over the quality of our lives than we often realize. He's given us the ability to choose what we focus on, what we expect, what we rehearse mentally, what meaning we assign to circumstances, and then, of course, how to respond when life does not unfold according to our plans. And those things matter way more than what most people think. So, the woman listening to this podcast is likely carrying a lot. Maybe this is you. Okay. How many of these boxes do you tick? The woman listening to this podcast might be somebody who's building a business or pursuing a meaningful career. She's showing up for her family. She's trying to be a present wife. She's trying to be an engaged mom, a faithful believer, a good friend, a responsible adult. She has goals and dreams and ambitions. She's trying to take care of her health, her animals, her garden. I mean, all of these different things, right? But there are days when she feels as though she's simply moving from one responsibility to the next without fully experiencing the life that she's working to create. And she's working hard to create that life. And if that sounds familiar, I want you to know that I understand. There have been seasons in my own life when I felt as though I was constantly striving towards some future version of happiness. Of course, right? I am a wife. I'm a mom of three. I have two adult children. So I'm kind of in that launching phase of life. And I just remember always looking ahead to the next milestone, to the next, income goal, to the next opportunity, the next breakthrough. And in the process of doing all that, I was unintentionally surrendering my own ability to experience joy and peace and gratitude and possibility right there in the present moment. So, what I eventually discovered is that beautiful lives are not created in the big dramatic moments. They're actually created through thousands of seemingly insignificant moments that accumulate over time. A beautiful life is built through beautiful days. And beautiful days are built through intentional thoughts and intentional expectations, intentional attention, and intentional choices. And that's what I want to talk about today because I think many women are underestimating just how much influence they have over the atmosphere of their own lives. And they're feeling a deep sadness because of it. And so I want to speak to this directly. One of the most important things I have learned through both personal experience and coaching is that human beings are constantly telling themselves stories. From the moment you wake up in the morning until the moment you go to bed at night, there is an ongoing narrative running in the background of your mind. For some women, the narrative sounds something like, this is going to be a really stressful day, or I'm already behind, or I have too much to do. Nothing ever works out the way I want it to. I'm so exhausted. I can't seem to get ahead. I don't know how I'm going to make this work. Those thoughts may seem harmless because they feel normal. Maybe this is just kind of how you wake up or how you get your day going. They may even feel realistic because you know your life and that feels realistic for your life. But over time, what happens is they begin creating a lens through which you experience your life. The problem is not that difficult things happen. Difficult things happen for all of us. The problem is that many women rehearse struggle so consistently that they begin expecting it. Once they begin expecting it, they start noticing evidence of it everywhere they look. Meanwhile, another woman may face equally challenging circumstances, but she carries a very different internal narrative. She wakes up believing that God is with her, that opportunities are available to her, that solutions exist, that she's capable of handling whatever comes her way that day, and that even unexpected setbacks can be used for her good. So do you see how differently those two women are likely to experience the same day? The circumstances may not be like dramatically different in their lives, but their expectations are. And expectations influence experience more than people realize. So, one of the reasons that expectation is so powerful is because it influences what you pay attention to. Now, I'm not saying that, expectation magically changes your reality, but I am saying that expectation changes your experience of reality. So, I want you to think about that for a moment. So here's an example. I've used this before, and I know that you probably have heard of this, but maybe you haven't. Even if you have, the reminder's good. Have you ever decided that you wanted, a certain type of car, a certain type of vehicle, and suddenly you started seeing that vehicle everywhere? The cars were always there, okay? They were always there. They did not suddenly appear in the moment you became interested in them. What changed was your awareness. Once you decided that you wanted the car, you just started seeing it everywhere because your awareness clued into that. The same thing happens in everyday life. If you expect rejection, you become highly sensitive to signs that someone may not approve of you. If you expect failure, you become highly sensitive to evidence that something might not work. If you expect disappointment, you become highly attuned to everything that is missing, that is delayed, or that's imperfect. But if you expect opportunities, you begin noticing opportunities. If you expect solutions, you begin noticing solutions. If you expect God's provision in your life, you begin noticing evidence of His provision in your life. And this is why I believe expectation is one of the most underappreciated forces in a person's life. Not because it changes who God is, and it's not because it controls circumstances, but because it changes the lens through which you experience your circumstances. So when I look back at different, seasons and times in my life where I felt discouraged or frustrated or stuck, I can often see that I had unintentionally trained myself to look for evidence that things were not working. I was paying attention to what was missing instead of paying attention to the solution. I was paying attention to what had not yet happened. I was paying attention to every reason I should be concerned or worried. And while some of those concerns may have been understandable, they were not helping me create the life that I wanted. In Matthew, it talks about worry. And that's something that I have really had to study in my life because my nickname as a child was Worrywart. I worried about everything. And so I really had to rewire my brain to not worry. Eventually, what I had to do is just ask myself a different question. So, what if I started looking for evidence of things that were working? What if I started looking for evidence of growth? What if I started paying attention to opportunities instead of all the obstacles that I was focusing on? What if I stopped assuming that life was happening against me and started believing that God was actively working on my behalf? And that shift that I decided to make, it changed so many things in my life, way more than I expected. So, one of the reasons that I am so passionate about bridging the gap between mindset work and biblical principles is because I think many Christians have unknowingly separated these concepts that were never meant to be separated. So, when people hear words like manifestation or expectation or imagination or vision or possibility, they often become uncomfortable because they assume that these ideas belong exclusively to the self-help world. But when I read scripture, I see expectation everywhere. In Hebrews 11:1, it tells us that faith is the substance of things hoped for and the evidence of things not seen. What is hope if not expectation? What is faith if not the willingness to believe something is possible for you before you can physically see it? That is faith. Throughout scripture, we see people who were willing to expect something different than their current circumstances suggested over and over again. Abraham expected descendants when there was no evidence. David expected victory when everyone else expected defeat. The woman with the issue of blood expected healing before she even touched the hem of Jesus's garment. Again and again, we see people partnering with possibility instead of limitation. Now, this does not mean they ignored reality. It means they refused to let reality be the final authority. And there is a difference. And I think that many women need to hear this today. You don't have to pretend that your problems don't exist. I'm not asking you to do that. You don't have to deny difficult circumstances, and you don't have to force yourself into fake positivity. If you know me, you know I'm not about that at all. But you also do not have to become emotionally devoted to what is wrong. You are allowed to believe something better is possible for your life. You are allowed to expect good things. You're allowed to anticipate growth. You're allowed to believe that God can open doors that you currently cannot see. So, one of the things that I have observed both in my own life and in the lives of my clients is that expectation changes behavior. So, if you have a woman who expects rejection, she's going to be moving throughout her day and her life so differently than a woman who expects connection. A woman who expects failure, she's going to be moving differently through her day and her life than a woman who expects growth. A woman who expects criticism, again, she's going to move differently through her day and her life than a woman who expects favor. The woman who is expecting good things is often more willing to take action because she's not constantly bracing for disappointment. So she sends that email, she posts the content, she launches the offer, she starts that project or that business, she introduces herself to someone new, she asks questions, she takes the next step. And it's not because she knows everything's going to work out perfectly. It's because she is no longer living in constant anticipation of things going wrong. And I think many women underestimate how much energy they actually spend mentally and emotionally and otherwise preparing for disappointment. So they're constantly rehearsing what they don't want. They're thinking about it. They're ruminating. They're imagining negative outcomes. They're anticipating problems before any problems actually exist. Then they wonder why they feel anxious, overwhelmed, and exhausted. Well, of course they do. They've been carrying the emotional weight of problems that haven't even happened. One of the most powerful shifts a woman can make is deciding that she's no longer going to spend her days rehearsing disaster. Instead, she's going to rehearse possibility. She's going to rehearse blessing. So I want to make this really practical, okay? Imagine two women. Both are wives, both are mothers, both are building businesses, both love Jesus, both have similar responsibilities throughout their day, both encounter challenges throughout the day. Okay? The first woman wakes up and immediately checks her phone. Before she's even gotten out of bed, she has consumed stress and comparison and bad news and other people's priorities. By the time she starts her day, she already feels behind. So throughout the day, she continues reinforcing that feeling. Every inconvenience becomes evidence that life is hard. Every delay becomes evidence that things are not working out for her. Every challenge becomes proof that she's overwhelmed. The second woman experiences many of the same circumstances, but she begins her day differently. So before she reaches for her phone, she takes a moment to connect with God. She reminds herself that this is the day that the Lord has made. I will rejoice and be glad in it. She reminds herself that today is a gift. She asks herself what she would love to experience today. She's expecting opportunities. She's expecting guidance. She's expecting favor. When challenges arise, she does not pretend that they are enjoyable. She just refuses to let them define the entire day. She's just not going to put her focus there. By the end of the day, these women have not necessarily lived completely different lives, but they have had very different experiences. And if they continue living that way for years, their lives are going to look very different as well. Because days become weeks, and weeks become years, and years become lives. Now, I want to leave you with something practical because I never want these like conversations or me sharing with you to sound, theoretical. The first thing I would encourage you to do is become intentional about the first few minutes of your day. This is a game changer. And I know the majority of women, because I work with so many, this is not something they're prioritizing. And once they do, it changes the trajectory of their day. Be really intentional about the first few minutes of your day. Before you consume the world's agenda, spend a few minutes reconnecting with your own. Spend time with God. Spend time in gratitude. Spend time setting your focus for the day. The second thing that I would encourage you to do is ask yourself a simple question. What would I love today? Not what am I afraid of or what could go wrong or what problems need solving in my life right now, but what would I genuinely love to happen today? Would you love a meaningful connection today? Would you love an unexpected opportunity? Would you love a peaceful, restful afternoon? Would you love to feel connected to your family? Would you love to sign a new client? Give your attention somewhere useful. The third thing I would encourage you to do is start noticing evidence that good things are already happening all around you all the time. This sounds so simple, but it's so powerful. Your brain is constantly gathering evidence. Make sure you're helping it collect evidence that supports possibility and growth and provision and abundance and God's goodness in your life. Finally, stop treating every difficult moment as though it has the authority to define your day. A difficult moment is just a moment. Something I say to my kids all the time is, hey, if this isn't going to matter in 5 years, maybe don't spend more than 5 minutes on it. We have difficult moments that maybe require sometimes a little bit more than 5 minutes, but we're not going to lose sleep over it, right? Okay, so difficult moments don't have to become your identity. They don't have to become a part of your story all the time. It does not have to become a forecast for your future, all right? So before we close, I want to leave you with a few takeaways. First, your expectations shape your experience more than you realize. Your life is moving in the direction of your most dominant thoughts. The way you anticipate life affects the way that you perceive it. The way you anticipate life affects the way you perceive it, and it affects the way you respond to it, and it affects the way that you ultimately participate in it. Okay? Keep that front of mind. Number two, faith and expectation are deeply connected. Faith is not this sort of passive wishing for things. Faith is the willingness to partner with possibility before there is physical evidence. That is what faith is. And as a believer, we should all be faith focused. We should all be partnering with possibility before there's any physical evidence. Third, you have more influence over the quality of your day than you may have been giving yourself credit for. You can absolutely influence your focus, your attention, your response, your attitude, all of those things. Okay, the fourth thing, beautiful lives are built through beautiful days. The life you desire is not created in one massive breakthrough. It's created through thousands of intentional moments. Just be present. Be aware throughout your day. If you're not feeling good emotionally, it's usually because you're thinking thoughts that are creating those emotions. And finally, stop preparing for disappointment and start preparing for possibility. Start preparing for opportunity and everything that's good and exciting. You may be surprised how differently you move through life when you stop expecting everything to go wrong. So if this episode resonated with you and you know that you're ready to become more intentional about the life that you're creating, I want to personally invite you into the Inner Shift Society. This is my private community. We go much deeper into these conversations around identity and self-concept, around mindset and faith, around how to subconsciously rewire your brain, how to embrace abundance and business growth, income growth, becoming the woman that you know God created you to be. Because the truth is that transformation rarely happens through information alone. We are consuming so much information every day. Transformation, real transformation, happens through repetition, through reinforcement, and through community, people who are doing the same work alongside you. So if you're looking for deeper, more personalized support, this is also the exact type of work that I do with my private coaching clients. Together, we uncover patterns and beliefs and habits that may be holding you back and begin creating a new way of thinking, believing, and living that is personalized to you. So whether you join us inside the community or you want to work with me more closely one-on-one, I want you to know that the life you desire is not nearly as far away as it feels. So tomorrow morning, okay? Message me and tell me how this goes for you. Tomorrow morning, before the world tells you what kind of day you're going to have, decide what kind of day you would love to create. Choose what you're going to focus on. Choose what you are going to expect. Choose what you're going to rehearse mentally. And choose what kind of woman you want to be, because while you can't control everything and every circumstance that enters your life, you do have far more influence over your experience than you may have been led to believe. So now, as I say every week, go and be the woman that your future is waiting on. Thank you so much for spending some time with me today. I will see you all next week. Be blessed.